Hi everyone, it's ThePokeTesla here in an electrifying video. Now, as you all know, I am the person who created tonight's Friday race level. So, throughout the months of us making this, I have saved every single beta version, or just every single version of this level. So today I'm going to show you every single version of Tesla's Molten Castle Climb, and show you how it's changed and what the original vision was, and show you how the testing process went to see how this level became better and just different. So, without further ado, let's dive into Saturday Race Level Beta 1.0. As you can see, when this level was first created, there wasn't even a name for it. And there wasn't a name for this level for a long time. So don't mind these are just dev doors for the creators. So just for minor things, as we can see, there is a arrow and coins. There was no ceiling on top of here to prevent you from going any higher, and there's only one POW when doing the POW drop. Let's go in the pipe. As you can see, there's no aesthetics. All of these blocks are moved all the way to the left, and there is only 2 doors instead of 3. Now moving in here, as you can see, the aesthetics are definitely different. There is no aesthetics at all in this level. And as you can see, the survival room hasn't even been added. There are only 4 rooms. This, as in also if you noticed, this level was called a Saturday race level. This is because this level was originally for the Saturday races. However, the testers deemed this level to be too difficult, and it was buffed to be a Friday level difficulty. Let's go into the first room. Here's the invisible block room. As you can see, there are many changes. There are 2 saw blades instead of 1. There's a cloud here, and the floor is much different. Also, collecting this beetle is much different for the setup as well. When grabbing the beetle and doing the shell jump here, this is a much different and weirder setup. Also, there is a power for no reason. And lastly, for this trick, there's a very awkward cannon jump to get the coin. I'll show it off right here as I die. So that's pretty much the cannon jump. Now let's move on to the next room, the donut room. This part was relatively the same, and you can still see the coin from the top. However, there was no floor, and it has been very redesigned. Right here, instead of a saw blade, there are 2 spikes. Right here, the saw blade is 1 lower, so you actually can get hit by it. There are no spikes here, and there is no donut section to get to the top. As you can see, even here, there are more arrows, and there's not even any spikes. This is probably because it was a Saturday race level. This part's very easy as well, and you can actually die when grabbing the red coin here. This was a very cool setup, but however, it was removed because dying to red coins was not very liked. Let's move on to the P-switch room. As you can see, the platforming is much easier as opposed to the current level. There are a little there's more spikes right here, and the setup to get to the jump is harder. Easier, I should say. And there are more blocks to jump on. There's a shellmate here, and as you can see, to get down here is much different as well. And lastly, there was a P-jump. This was quickly removed. Let's move on to the boot room. Right here, this is pretty much the same. This 1 layer of blocks was added here in the original idea, and this setup was relatively the same. However, the boot was given here rather than from the platform. As you can see with the hopping out of the boot trick, this is identical to the race level where this was previously seen. In the final version of this level, it is much harder. However, this trick is pretty much free. And also, the setup to get to the next section is much different. As you can see, you have to try to avoid the saw blade to get to the next room. This door is later used for the next section that was added. However, it was used here just for convenience. You grab another winged boot. This is pretty much the same, however, there are spikes above. And there's no section, there's no wall clip section. It is literally just grab the boot, hop on these, go under, and grab the coin. The secret ending was still in this level. However, the text was much different and the spike placement was also different. So it was much easier to actually get killed by this. And instead of the ThePokeTesla, it says twitch.tv/ThePokeTesla. And also the lettering is a little different as well. And then lastly, there's no survival room. So that is beta 1.0 of the Saturday race level. Now how about we take a look at 1.1. As you can see, it was then changed to Friday race level because this was after the first few people tested it and they said it was way too hard, and the choice was either to nerf it a little and make this a Saturday level or buff it a lot and make it a Friday level. We obviously went the route of buffing it to a Friday race level. Now, that's why the name changed, but there was still no name for the level. Let's check out Friday race level beta 1.1. Once again, the dev doors. This is all relatively the same. However, once you go in here, we can see the survival room was added. You're going to see a lot of buffs in this version, as this was the first time we buffed it to a Friday level, rather than a Saturday level. Lots of these tricks may seem a little harder. As you can see, the saw blade placement is much more pretty and different. This is relatively the same. The setup's totally the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is different. This trick right here, this was all added. And this was added as well. However, there was no track surrounding the original invisible blocks. So there were coins here. So it made it much more confusing on if there were actually invisible blocks there. And lastly, this jump stayed the same. Next, as we can see, some of these blocks are rearranged, and all spikes were lowered down to all fours. There was a saw blade finally added. This stayed one block lower, and there were two spikes added right here. And there was a random fire bar here just so to fill up empty space. Spikes were added, but the arrow stayed the same. And lastly, these munchers were hired as well. Let's take a look at the subworld. As you can see, now we have the 3 blocks, and there were 2 coins added here for the peace section to prevent any possible cheese. As you can see, another spike was added here. And this pretty much stayed the same. Let's move on to the boot room. Boot room pretty much stayed the same. I believe this was raised 1 block. This trick, exactly the same, except the boot there was removed. And as you can see right here, we had to get rid of the door that was originally here for the survival room. So since the rest of the tricks were over here, we had to have a pathway. So you had to keep the boot and then boot jump up and then grab the next boot over here. It actually worked pretty well. It wasn't too far away. Next, these jumps pretty much stayed the same as well. And then we see the instance of the boot clip. This was finally added. However, the setup was a little annoying with these blocks here. But now we can see the section kind of took its place. And it's possible to get hit from the boot right here too. Now let's move on to the new section, the survival room. This is very sloppy. As you can see, there are tracks everywhere. There's no aesthetics. There's blocks. The burners don't move. There's not as many cannons. And there is a fire bar. And also the star section is very weird and very easy. And there was no star in the corner right here. And lastly, for the secret room, we can see the ThePokeTesla was finally added. The text is still a little different, and the spikes are now in the top. The only room that stayed the same throughout the entirety of this is the last room. The only differences were some secret 1-ups that were added, and these one-way gates. Also, we can see there were spikes here, because if you didn't take off, you would get hit. However, this was removed because it was possible you could die after going through the key door. How about we check out 1.2? This stayed the same, and a hidden 1-up was added right at the start of the pipe. This stayed pretty much the same. And this stayed the same as well. Let's check out the first room. So as you can see, this was more condensed with the invisible blocks. We could see these blocks, everything was moved over to the left one. And there was a hidden one up in this block right here. As you can see, the shell trick is pretty much the same. And this was hired one. And the trick here stayed the same. As for this room, arrows were added. And there was another hidden block added here. This beta mostly added a bunch of secrets and just a little minor changes for the next tester. Let's check out the subworld. Once again, we can see this pretty much stayed the same. Some bricks were added for convenience here. Invisible block was added here, even though it was kind of pointless. And this pretty much stayed the same. Except there were blocks added right here to prevent you from accidentally missing the coin. Alright, boot room. Boot room stayed pretty much the same. Except now, you didn't have to do a boot jump. They wanted you to keep the boot. And there was a trampoline added here. This room was very sloppy and wasn't really thought through. Boot clip room pretty much stayed the same, except the blocks were removed, just so you didn't bonk your head a lot. Survival room, very refined. As you can see now, even though the burners still don't move, it looks much cleaner with the blocks, and however, there's still some cannons that aren't in the final product. The star room stayed the same as well. And as you can see, the text was finally different to make it look cleaner. And now looks the way it is now, I believe. Oops. And as we can see, the spikes were removed in this version. Okay. Let's check out, I believe, 1.3. Yes. As we can see now, bricks are added here, and the ceiling was added. Some minor blocks to make it look better were added. First room. Instead of a pound block, now we have the coin block. And this challenge was much more refined to look much better. There's only one invisible block here, and there was a coin now. These tricks pretty much stayed the same, but look at this! This trick was finally changed. It is a much better version now. There's a cannon shot with 2 invisible blocks. This was later changed to 1, and the cannon, as you all know, was changed to a red cannon. This section, the donut section. This pretty much always stayed the same, and it was changed at the last beta, or the last version of the level. Let's move on to the subworld. As you can see, it was moved over 2. It was barely moved over, but it was moved over. This section added an arrow. And the rest of it pretty much stayed the same. I think the P block was moved over 1. Because this looks a little different. Boot section. It's pretty much stayed the same. And right here, now we have the final version. This is how it stayed. You have this version, and then you have the saw blades, which would bring you over, and then you go down here. That's how this little pathway became what it is now. The coins were added. And then for the survival room, this all stayed the same. Nothing changed. And pretty much everything stayed the same, actually. This was a very minor change. It just pretty much made some of the not as ugly parts. Or should I say the ugly parts not as ugly. Now, how about we see how the big leap into the final version was made. When it actually got the full name and everything was added. Tesla's Molten Castle Climb. Now, with all the testers combined, Tesla was able to make, or should I say I don't know. We were able to make the great level that it is today. Tesla's Molten Castle Climb. This went through a lot of edits, so let's check out what it went through. As we can see, all the aesthetics are added to make it look much more beautiful. More pals were added. All the invisible blocks were added for all the secrets. For this room, as you can see, it's a little more difficult with the saw blades. The setup to grab the beetles much easier. There's an invisible block here. There's the coin block here. There's a spring added here to make the trick more easy, or just more obvious. The block was moved over one. There was a spike added here. This setup and trick was different, as there's a red cannon now, and there's one block. For this section, this was totally refined. As we can see, this block was highered one. This was raised one. And this was a totally new. These were lowered, as it's now for a shell jump, and now you have to avoid it to get to the coin. And it is impossible to die now from grabbing the coin. The setup's totally different. Let's move on. As you see, this was totally moved over to allow for more aesthetics. Right here, as you can see, the platforming was made much more difficult. This was added so you can't cheese by going down here. And the stupid little fireball thing was removed. And the P-jump was removed as well, to add a spring shell jump rather than the original P-jump that it was, because the testers were very against having it. Okay, the boot room. Some visible blocks are added, aesthetics were changed, and right here is where the P part got very difficult. The testers seemed that it was too related to the Saturday race level of this trick, so they said to make it a more Friday-friendly trick. So, this trick goes all out. This stayed the same, and now it's a big boot rather than a small boot, and all the blocks on top are removed, so now you have to hit both of these fire bars, and possibly even ground pound to get on these clouds, do a couple of ground pound cancels for this guy, and the boot clip was finally added to make it what it is today. And it's also now impossible to miss the coin. Survivor room, very changed. Now the burners move, the cannons are where they should be, the pipe was moved to the bottom rather than the top, and a cannon was added here. And for the star room, it was made much more interesting. There's a 2-block gap you have to jump, there's a jump right here, we have to grab the POW, and there's a spring jump. And as we can see, the text was revised a little, and the spikes were added to the top. Here's a quick error. This was a dev pipe that wasn't removed in the final version. It was too late to remove because it was already uploaded when it was realized. So there's a little Easter egg, I guess. And finally, let's move on to the end. As we can see, the avatar was taken. And right here, this was kind of refined a little, just for the aesthetics. Some hidden blocks. There's one up over here. And that is pretty much it. So I hope everyone enjoyed this little beta showcase of Tesla's Molten Castle Climb. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the level. Hope you had fun. Peace out.